Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And this week, joining us from Germany is Usman Kotwal. Hi, Usman. Welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Usman is a Scrum Master and Agile coach in the field of data analytics and life sciences. He considers his learning journey to continue forever when it comes to bringing forward change in the ways we work collaboratively. His mission helps guide the way to empowered product teams. So Usman, that was a short intro. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
So I was always very interested in natural sciences. So I thought, why not study sciences? I became a material scientist. And during my studies, I also got some glimpses of the automotive world. I enjoyed working there. I enjoyed working collaboratively, but there were some things that always felt a bit off. Lots of handovers, lots of, processes that felt a bit much. After my studies, I didn't know what I wanted to do, if I wanted to pursue a doctorate in the field, to go into research. And a friend of mine told me, hey, look into consulting. They're always looking for people who are technically minded. I tried that and I did that. And the first project I was thrown in was into again, automotive company, where the aim was to help product owners adopting this new system they were working on. So they were working on a website, and they had development teams, and things weren't going as smoothly. So I got in. I told them, I don't know much. I'm really new. And they were like, maybe that's exactly what we need. And so I started reading on what the entire world of agility has to offer, and I was very mesmerized. And more importantly, what really got me was, as a scientist, I guess, it was this inspecting and adapting kind of thinking, which to me seemed like, the scientific method in small. And to me seemed very, very common sense almost. And this obviously made me fall for it quite a bit. So I thought, hey, maybe I should start getting more and more into projects where I actually don't just help the product owners, but effectively take off the role as a Scrum Master, even if it's just in the beginning as a greenhorn. And I guess some time passed, and here I am.
I think of all of the stories that we have had here on the podcast, I think yours has a little bit of a different flavor. Many of us have discovered Agile by accident or serendipity, just like you did. But of course, not all of our backgrounds are the same. It's quite interesting to see how you went to the very traditional and process-focused automotive, and then you felt, okay, this is not for me. That's something that is very familiar. I used to be a project manager, traditional project manager, and I also had those struggles, right? Like that didn't feel that was the right thing. But of course, as we get into this new and marvelous world, or wondrous world of Agile, we also struggle sometimes, and it's important to share some of those struggles with our audience so that we can all learn from this aspect that are not so easy, but of course bring with them a lot of lessons learned. So Usman, share with us one of those stories where you as a Scrum Master, you struggled, and we want to learn what that struggle was. We'll dive into the conclusions and insights and lessons learned later on, but tell us that story, how it got started and how it developed over time.
I'm going to start off with one of my biggest struggles, actually. It's a story that, to me, it shifted my view on things. It was basically a team which had several really good senior developers. Most of the team was very collaborative. And there was one person who was a bit less so, let's say that way. He had his own way of thinking, his own way of doing things. He was very critical.
What do you mean by critical? Do you mean he was complaining or criticizing everybody?
It was a mix of both. So first of all, it was technical criticality, as in he looked at things from a different lens, which I thought was incredibly helpful. And the entire team actually thought was really helpful. But at the same time, he was also critical of every team consensus or ways of working the team had, because he had figured out a way he liked to work. And for him, it was his way or the highway, as in, hey, I'm just going to do my stuff. You can keep doing your stuff. In a team setting with a shared goal, this becomes heavily detrimental, because what will happen is that, for instance, the more junior engineers, the more junior devs will have a difficulty, starting to learn things If he's like, no, I'm just going to do it my way, I don't really want to do that. I'm not a person who's good in educating things and these kind of things. Over time, this got grating. It actually was difficult for the rest of the team. And I was pretty new to this kind of field, having this kind of responsibilities. And similar to my product owner who came from a very traditional field beforehand and was, let's say, also in a world where we didn't take that kind of action, what we did is nothing. We talked about it. We had talked about it in retrospectives, but nothing really came out of it, which also is, one of the worst kind of retrospectives you can have, retrospectives where you don't take fulfilling actions.
So what do you think was happening there? Like, was the team stepping back because they were afraid of maybe hurting or creating a conflict with this person? Why was the team stepping back?
It was a mix, really. There were times where the team was coming forward, and there were times where the team was stepping back. So I think when I talked to the team, they told me it's because he's very talented, which was something that kept him very much on the team, because they were like, he comes with ideas that we would never have come up with. And if you feel like you're on the same level with him and on a specific topic, it also felt like, okay, he's really good to talk to, because then you're meeting him on his conditions. And similarly, he was willing to work on specific topics, even if those were really grating topics, because he had a big idea of following through to make things excellent.
So he was kind of committed to his own ways of seeing the world and his goals.
Yes, exactly. And while this is in some sense, this is admirable, it didn't work with the rest of the team.
So we've already explored some of the reasons why it didn't work. I mean, a big sign is what you said, right? Like we talk about it, but we don't do anything about it. So that sounds to me already that the team was kind of scared, which is one of the worst places to have a team in, right? Like if they are scared to talk about what matters, because that leads or leaves the problems to fester, I think is the word, right? Like the problem just grow bigger and bigger because we're not addressing them. So that's one way in which this kind of attitude doesn't work with the team. But there's another one. I don't know if this was the case, so I wanted to ask it. And I've seen this also in many different settings, at work, obviously, but not only at work, even in groups of friends and in the political discourse and everything. Maybe the team was afraid of this guy.
So I would say, besides one specific person who would always feel like I don't want to speak out every time, I do think that was the case. Especially the junior devs, they didn't want to make waves. And when it comes to the senior devs, it seemed like there was one person who was, let's say, on the opposite end of the spectrum, who was very committed to working very collaboratively, who after some time told me that he just felt tired. He just felt like, okay, I've been talking about it and I don't want to feel like a complainer, like complaining every single time. And so that happened. Yeah, so I do think that you're right on the money with that one too.
So how did this story unravel?
So in the end, all of this festered for way too long. And we were pushed into a decision. And that was that a specific team member told me that I'm not sure if I can stay on the team anymore. And it's a team member we really want to have on the team because he was, as I said, very collaborative. He said, like, hey, this is what I can offer you, that I change the team. And that's when I finally saw the red flags being really, really raised to the highest point. I was like, okay, we now have to do something, because realistically, this has been festering, and this has been on my radar too. That's the worst part. But I always thought, like, maybe we talk about it, maybe we do something small here and there, but it didn't really change anything. And from then on, everything worked pretty fast. I talked with the product owner, I talked with the team, I talked with the person who was there too. And we got to the conclusion, more or less, that maybe it's best for him to shift teams, ideally to a team where we think that he feels well, where he himself thought, like, okay, those are developers I think I can really work well with. And that was the conclusion. But so it resolved, let's say this way, considering the situation, it resolved in a good way, but it was breaking point. It was absolutely breaking point.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it, right? Like when one team member is willing to sacrifice him or herself, not just because they can't take it anymore, but because they feel that if I continue, I will just cause problems to the team, right? Like I will start complaining all the time, and that's not productive for me or for the team. I think that's a very big red flag, as you said. If you look back, like what do you wish you would have done differently at that time?
When I'm looking back, it's not as if everything was that clear cut in the first place. It's not as if the team has just been complaining, because the team has also already been very much singing nice songs about that person, in a sense of, we like that you're critical, we like you doing this, and your work doing here is pretty amazing. What I learned for me in that case is when it comes to interpersonal relationships and interpersonal conflict during the team, every gut feeling and every sense should be listened to. And everything I would have done would be to make it transparent in an almost aggressive way. And even if it's just asking, okay, I'm thinking right now that this situation, there's some personal conflict going on. Would you be open to share? Even if it's something like this. Because in the end, it was, by the way, in a retrospective where it came up by seeing that they were not able to come to a conclusion where we wanted to have everyone on board. And people got really angry, which was the first and only time I've seen the people become that angry. So if I were to do this again, first of all, I would have acted a lot sooner. And for me now, there is a time frame for the team to be willing to keep another person when it doesn't work out, which is a very personal one. It's 6 months, which means that is enough time to talk about it, to make it transparent, to get to a change. And if that change is not fulfilled over and over, I'm much more willing to talk to the team about consequences.
That is a very good point. And we should, as Scrum Masters, be willing to do that. And the consequence might be that we leave, and that's okay too. But what we can't do is, as you said, ignore our gut feelings, because we are humans too, and we can sense when problems are starting. And very often we try to smother those gut feelings by telling ourselves, nah, this will work itself out. We'll just have a retro and everything will be fine, and so on. But sometimes things will not be fine.
Absolutely. I also think that it undermines the agency of the team if they're not able, as a team, to figure out on if this team setup is working or not. And I've seen it with, let's say, traditional project management, where the teams then feel almost stuck and they're like, oh, we're going to look for something in the future when this person can leave or something else. And then it takes years and years, and this deteriorates trust and the ways of working fully. This is why I rather err on the side of action and maybe being a bit too hasty with those 6 months than doing the mistake of not doing it and seeing how the entire team fully deteriorates.
Absolutely. I love that lesson, because it's a lesson that can only be born out of experience. You don't learn this in the books. Thank you for sharing that, Usman.
My pleasure.
Monday is about what we learn from our obstacles and our failures. But tomorrow is Team Tuesday here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. We explore teams and their journeys, the habits they develop that threaten their performance, how each of our guests help their teams evolve, and the one key lesson they learned from that experience. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.